if you're a lawyer, if you're an international relations person, if you're interested in the process of international integration, if you're interested in economics, economic cooperation across borders, there is an aspect of this problem that should be of interest to you. And so I'm very encouraged by that. I think it is inevitable. And also the fact that our culture in its films and music and everything is constantly luring us into space with dramas and so it's captured the imagination of young people as well. So I don't have any doubt that our younger generation is going to take an interest in space. What I'd hope to do is that they will channel that interest more into how we can use space for the betterment of the community as a whole, rather than particular countries. Now, Ambassador Kamal, I think quite rightly, says that we're stuck with this nation-state system, and but there have been proposals that go beyond simply codes of conduct or a treaty between states. In 1961, for example, the French government proposed the creation of an international satellite agency that would take charge of putting satellites into space, where countries, if they had a satellite to go up for weather forecasting or for any other civilian purpose like that, they would basically provide the satellite to an international launching agency. They would put it into space, and there'd be no question as to what the purpose of that satellite is, where it would be going, or what would be in it in terms of its contribution to space debris. I think that proposal is now about 50 years old, but I suspect that in time there will be a return to the idea of creating some kind of international space launch system, which would be also very good for developing countries that can't afford to have their own space launch system. It'd be very good to have them be able to have their own nationally owned satellites to be able to be cheaply launched into space by an international consortium. So there's a lot of interesting things that are possibilities.
Yeah, but I don't see. I can understand France putting that proposal forward, and I can understand developing countries putting that forward. But I cannot understand why the United States would ever agree to that proposal. And without a U.S. agreement, this proposal is going to go nowhere. 50 years, you can wait 500 years, and it will go nowhere.
Well, another thing to consider is that no country on Earth is more dependent on its commercial peaceful satellites than the United States. The United States has an enormous stake in preventing military use of outer space because the U.S. has most to lose from this. I think it's quite clearly that's the case. If you look at the number of satellites up there, you look at their cost and what their functions are, the U.S. has an enormous vested interest in trying to keep these weapons out of space. The only thing that is holding us back is the idea that somehow we can use space as a missile defense measure, as a way of defending the United States against long-range missiles that may be launched against us. If somehow the world community can deal with that missile threat through some kind of limitation or prohibition, then that would take the wind out of that kind of argument entirely. And I think it might expand the prospects for eventually having some kind of a total ban. But it's impossible to predict that.
Yes, but our problem is in rule of law. That is to say, we want to prevent threats from others, but we are not willing to constrict our own abilities. And that is not rule of law. That means I'm only defending my own interests, not the interests of a global community.
Yeah.
And once again, this is something to answer that first question from Mercy. This is something that the students have to think about, of whether the objective has to be the security of an individual country or whether it has to be a question of rule of law in a globalized world. Which of those two is the objective that you would like to see as you grow and as your children and grandchildren grow? You'll have to find the answer yourself. Over to Montclair for two questions from Montclair.
Hi, my name is Jordan Hirschhorn from Montclair High School. This is a two-part question regarding foreign policy on outer space. If the United Nations has named outer space as a system open for free scientific development, should it be allowed to regulate this privately funded research and development, especially if this research is specifically geared towards self-defense? And also, if agreement on definitions of military satellites cannot be accomplished, should space be regulated at all?
Second question.
I'm Gabi Keels. Can you elaborate on the current risk of an asteroid or meteorite strike, as Mr. Kamal spoke about in the beginning, and how can the international community prevent this?
Okay, good questions, and I'm most impressed by the number of people attending this video session from Montclair. These universities should learn from the high schools about how to suck eggs. Congratulations to Montclair. On the first question, we are having this problem in the United States on the financial crisis. Should we have freedom in capitalism, or should we have regulation? And both, you have advantages and disadvantages in both. If you have free open market capitalism, you are going to get the Madoffs and the Enrons, etc. And if you have regulation, then you are giving up part of the freedom. So it's a very difficult choice. But please tell us whether you agree. And on the asteroids, I'm sure you know much more than I do.
Well, I can't really elaborate on that other than to suggest that we may have to rely on what little human history we have of the experiences we've had with efforts to entirely deregulate and to just have everyone do what they want and have free markets control all of our lives. You know, back in the United States in the late 19th century, we had that philosophy in power, and we had children working in factories and in mines. We had people that were chained to sewing machines, working in sweatshop conditions, and all because it was very justified by free market economics. People would work at those rates, and so therefore it must be good. Well, our society concluded that that's not how we want to live, and that there are other values in society we wanted to protect other than simply profits. And we want to protect the environment. We don't want to have technologies being developed that will be threats to us and used as weapons, not just us, but our friends and allies and neighbors and the rest of the world community. So it all comes down to what kind of world you want to pursue and who's to benefit. And when you start looking at those kinds of questions, there does seem to be a very strong argument that can be made, an overwhelming argument, I believe, for certainly for regulation and constraints, but I think also for the case for actual prohibition of putting certain kinds of technologies into space, because in the common interest. But that's just a personal view. Now, as for asteroid strikes, we have the same problem of being able to find them. Some of the very small asteroids are very, very difficult to spot. And the really large ones, there's been some people that have proposed that we should always have nuclear weapons because of the danger that someday one of these huge asteroids is going to be coming to the Earth. And if we don't stop it, it's going to land somewhere and send us back to the dinosaur age. Well, the problem with that is that if you send a nuclear weapon into space and try to destroy an asteroid with it, you end up creating even more debris. And it also won't work. If you have a large asteroid that's coming at that speed, it will not serve to either deflect or prevent that thing from hitting the Earth if it's big enough. So this is a very hotly controverted argument that's in the scientific community right now, and there's really no agreement on it, but a great deal of skepticism.
I just wanted to mention, because I am a member of the World Federation of Scientists, and that's how I know that they have classified a number of global emergencies, and you can look them up on the web. I think their website is called federationofscientists.org or .com, I'm not sure. And they are working on this problem of asteroids in outer space, and the person in charge is Russell